was thinking about the impacts of that, and also the changes in tax benefits, and of course also inheritance tax. And I wanted to touch on that kind of last, really, in terms of the tax benefits of giving to charity, even for your living relatives who will be obviously benefiting from your will, because they're the ones who have the impact of the inheritance tax when someone dies, not the person themselves. So could you just tell us a little bit more about that?
That's again, it's quite an interesting area, because there is the I mean, it's not as simple as this. Of course, it's never as simple as this. But if you leave charitable legacies, they are exempt from inheritance tax, plain and simple, providing they are actually charitable. But there's also a provision whereby if you leave, they say it's 10% of the estate. It isn't, because the estate is it's a mixture of things. It's assets that you've given away during your lifetime, but you've died within 7 years, so they still form part of the estate for tax. So there's that tranche. There's then assets that you own jointly that pass outside the terms of your will, and then there's the assets that do pass under the will. So it's actually 3 separate tranches, I guess, or groups, and you've got to leave 10% to charity, not across the board, but across those 3, to then you then get a reduced rate of inheritance tax on the rest of the estate. And my memory is saying it drops to 34% or something like that. But the thing with it, and I've looked at this a few times in the past, where I've run the numbers on it, and you would think, right, this is a good thing to do. So if we hit that requirement, if we do the 10% and we get the reduced rate for inheritance tax, then more money will go to the charities, and my children will pay less in inheritance tax because of the reduced rate. But every time I've run the numbers, it doesn't work. So it isn't that the non-charity beneficiaries receive more, it's just that there's less tax. Now, it may well be that I'm running the wrong numbers, but the conclusion that I've reached is that if you're in a position where you're already leaving funds to charity, then you may as well, if those funds are going to be significant, you may as well do a little bit more to get the reduced rate. But if you're only going to leave a small amount of charity, then it's generally not worth it. But the important thing within the will, as I say, it is not as simple as saying, right, 10% to charity, that will do it. There's a particular clause and wording that you need to use to make sure that the legacy that's left to charitable beneficiaries achieves what you need to get that reduced rate. So, yeah, I think, as I say, every time I've run the numbers on it, it doesn't end up with less, it doesn't end up with the children or close family members receiving more. But I think if you're already making that charitable legacy, then it's something that should be considered. Absolutely.
No, thank you, because I think that's it is something that lots of charities will use as or will say as a reason for leaving money in your will, and so it's actually helpful to understand the reality of what that actually looks like for most people.
Each case obviously will be different, and it depends what you're looking at, because it may well be that, okay, if you leave a certain amount to charity, then actually the estate then comes below the thresholds for inheritance tax. So there will be cases where it makes absolute sense to do that. But the other fun part, he says, interesting part, is that where you've got a mix of charity beneficiaries and non-charity beneficiaries. One of the questions that we will ask clients is, okay, do you want it to end up so that everybody gets an equal share? Because ordinarily, when you distribute, if you don't specify that, actually the charity shares are larger because they don't pay inheritance tax. So there's some important little quirks in there that we have to cover off.
Yeah, no, that is important, actually, and I think it's just important if you haven't and don't have as much experience and knowledge as someone who is advising on wills and leaving money to charity, that all those little nuggets of information that you're providing in this webinar is really helpful.